Welcome, everyone. We are here to talk about Superman and some other things that are going on in our world. I'm here with my most excellent co-host, and good friend as usual, Rufus. How you doing, Ruf?
Same as ever.
You always say that in such an exciting way. I feel like people are going to see this and say, "Wow, this Rufus guy has a lot of energy."
I have a lot going on. I'm a very exciting man.
You're living in the Fortress of Solitude currently. I envy that.
hmm It's
So,
cold.
so let's get into
Antarctica.
Superman's coming out with a new movie next week.
hmm
James Gunn is starting his universe attempt in DC. People are
hmm
excited. I feel like some people are excited, and some people say this movie is going to be a disaster right off the bat. So I'm curious what you think. I'm curious
I haven't
about.
seen it yet,
Okay, well let's
so
go ahead.
that's like the thing that makes me kind of like a lot of the time now movies are coming out and people already have an opinion,
Hmm.
like based on trailers or whatever,
Yeah,
and then they go in ready to be mad, and like you haven't seen the movie yet. Like, hold on. Like, watch the damn movie before you like have an opinion.
I think that both good and bad, and I think trailers are a big problem with movies nowadays because they give away so much in the trailer. So it's
hmm
become. I don't think that was a thing back in the '90s. I feel like they always had that same generic voice,
hmm
and it was the same kind of like, oh, this
In a
is
world.
yeah, in a world. Or if it was a comedy, it was imagine who's coming to dinner or something. It was kind. They didn't have to show every single joke or every single scene. The one I remember the most ruining things was Iron Man 2 when they showed Tony stepping into the suit at the
Mm.
racetrack. Which is like such an amazing scene, but you saw it in the trailer 50 times. So by the time you see it in the theater, it's like, oh, who cares? So I've been avoiding the trailers for Superman as best I can, which is hard because there has been a big marketing push for it, which is good. They at least want it to be seen, which I appreciate. But the interesting thing is, people were immediately coming down on Superman. Oh, he doesn't look right. He's not as big as Henry Cavill. His eyes are weird. The fly, like immediately, everyone hated this movie. Not everyone, but it felt like a good portion of people were laughing at this movie. And I don't know if it's just people are so ingrained
Well,
with
that might
Marvel or what.
might be your algorithm showing you that stuff too, because well, first of all, YouTube is just a hate machine, right?
That's true. Well, this is
So
all. Yeah, it's
there's
Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, but yeah, it's all the social media, the old man social media I'm on. I'm not on TikTok.
there's like there's those YouTube channels that are centered around negative reviews of stuff, and all they do is negative reviews,
Hmm.
right? So there's what is it, CinemaSins,
Oh yeah, I see.
and there's Nostalgia Critic, and who's kind of doing angry video game nerds shtick, but for movies,
Yeah,
and all that. And it's an easy way to get engagement because people engage with stuff that's like high energy and angry and whatever, but it's not like criticism, right?
yeah.
It's not like there's not a lot of depth to it.
They're not
So
critiquing it as a piece of art. They're more laughing at bad editing or a silly, thing that
yeah,
happened or something or a bad actor.
right. And if you're all you've got are like individual stills from a trailer with like 30 seconds of the guy act, like shots of the guy, like you're gonna notice like, oh, the distortion from this lens makes his eyes look weird or whatever.
Yeah, the
Like you're
flying.
not
I mean,
like, yeah, like, and I think there's also just in comic book world there's a loud contingent of people who are like nothing should ever change.
yeah,
Like George Reeves should still be Superman. Like like we should just have his bones in a cape flying across the screen, and nothing should ever be any different. And
his bones.
you're ruining my childhood.
I mean, Christopher Reeve understandably had the accident, so he couldn't come back ever
hmm
after that, and that was '95, and he had already done four in '87, so he was probably done with the character anyway
hmm
by four. We'll talk about that in a bit. But then you went to, I mean, you had a couple TV shows with Dean Cain,
hmm
You had Smallville, which I gotta admit, I really haven't seen, and I've heard a lot of good things about, but I can't get interested in like the high school drama of Clark Kent. That's just not for me.
Yeah, I watched it when I was in high school for a couple of years.
Well, that's the thing.
To my embarrassment.
I watched Lois and Clark when I was like 10 because
Okay.
it was the only thing on TV that was remotely superhero. But
Hmm.
like, I think by the second season, I reviewed some of it. I read about it today. By the second season, Lex Luthor wasn't there anymore, and he had no real villains. I think I probably tuned out too, because even as a fan, I just didn't care anymore. There wasn't enough Superman, which was a TV show, is understandable. But the next time,
Well,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, it's the same thing with Smallville. Is it was a CW show, or whatever. What was the WB Kids or whatever it was back then
Yeah, whatever.
before the mergers or
It
whatever.
used to be a bunch of different things.
It was that same genre of like directed toward teenagers,
Hmm.
and but not in a way that's like treating teenagers like they're intelligent. It's treating teenagers like they're idiots,
Yeah.
and they're only interested in like sex appeal and like stupid drama
Yeah.
plots. So, I mean, that's been very successful for that channel, I guess. That format.
Well, yeah, and then they
Um,
recreated what's it called, like the Archie comics, I think,
mhm.
with a drama. Which I mean, that was what? How does that work?
Yeah. And they did a version. I think Netflix did a version of Sabrina the Teenage Witch,
Did they really?
which was yeah.
Now that I haven't
Um,
heard. That's
but it was
definitely.
supposed to be like the darker version of it because there was like a dark version, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, dark comic. So that was the inspiration. So
Huh.
it's like they're witches, so they run a funeral home, and they eat the flesh of the dead bodies, um, stuff like that.
Now that's a Sabrina I would have watched back in the day because if Caroline Ray was eating dead bodies, you could get me to tune in.
Hmm.
Probably sponsors would tune into that also, but not on Netflix. I'm not a big Netflix guy, so.
I don't have it anymore.
Yeah, I stopped because once you watch a lot of stuff on there, it's like okay, cool. When something big comes out, I'll get it for a month, and then
Yeah, all I'm
I'll unsign up again. It's just I don't need to pay a perpetual $18
my
for stuff I'm
plan
not
was
watching.
I would get Stranger Things for the last season for a month and then cancel it again. But they split the season between 2 months.
They're doing it
So I'm gonna
because
have
of
to
us,
like
yeah, because of people like us.
I'm gonna have to they figured it out.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna have to wait until the second half of the season and or just pirate it, I guess.
I mean, yeah,
Don't come
yeah,
after me, but
yeah.
yeah.
Like if, we're totally joking. We're not going to pirate that. I've never pirated anything, but
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how it ends. But Stranger Things at this point, I have to rewatch it because I don't
the kids are
remember.
like 30
The
for
kids
one
age
thing.
they age super fast, and that's what happens to every time when you
The
cast
kids,
when you
yeah,
cast a kid,
they get older.
they get old really fast. It's because these shows don't film
Hmm.
quick. They take a year in between, and like in school, it was like
And
you measured yourself. How much did I grow this? It's like you grow fast. So go ahead.
and the streaming era is worse for it because they take 2 or 3 years between seasons when they
Yeah,
to decide if they're going to make more of it, uh, which in a way they didn't always used to. Like X Files would do a season every year, and they
they'd
would
have
do like,
contracts, and they knew they were coming
hmm
back, and they would film, and then they'd be off for a certain time, and they'd film. Stranger Things, it also seems like that show got very big very fast to the point where by season 2 they dictated like, no, we're going to take a lot of time off, let our people do all their projects, get all this writing, and then it became like, okay, 3 or 4 years between seasons.
hmm
How do you do a show like that, especially when the kids are only aging up 1 to 2 years each? And now it's like these kids look old,
yeah.
and they're supposed to be
Well,
17. It's just
we sang they look old, and we were like
we're almost 40. Yeah, I
the
understand.
Crypt Keeper
Yeah,
here saying these 20 somethings look old.
and not that the
Like,
ages matter, but it does get a little silly because some of them don't even look
yeah.
like themselves anymore. So
Um, yeah, so the I've and they Netflix on the other hand will cancel stuff really easy quick.
yeah,
That's the other streaming thing. Like they like Glow, like they had like a season cliffhanger or whatever, and then they just canceled it. And that was a really popular show.
I didn't I heard of Glow. I know the concept and stuff, but yeah, it's
It's
not
a
this,
wrestling show.
it's not the only the ladies of wrestling, which was a real thing
Hmm.
back in the day. Um,
Real.
well, real. It existed.
Kayfabe real.
It existed. Yes, it existed in time and space. Um, but yeah, I don't know what to make of Stranger Things at this point because it feels like
Mm-hmm.
they've stretched out their everything has a window of popularity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even the MCU is proving that. It's like they got to like 10 years really strong, and then after that, it's just waning. And they had a lot of property to go from. You talk
So
about
speaking of which, Superman has been
sorry,
going for 85, 86 years now.
87 years. Yeah. Well, he was 38. That was he had 1 year before Batman came and stole his thunder.
Mm-hmm.
So we had one solid year of being Superman on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't plan on talking about the comics, at least the original comics tonight, because that
Okay.
could be you can talk about whatever you want. I figured we would focus more on the movies and stuff just to get ready for the movie next week. But I know you
All right.
watched, and I watched some of a couple serials of the George Reeves Superman show. So Rufus, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I've only seen some clips of that. Well, Superman was the comic initially, like you said, and it was not long after that that there was a radio show.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then following the radio show, there was the George Reeves TV show, and um, I guess my knowledge of the radio show is that it actually successfully like took down the KKK for a while. So there was like a reporter who couldn't get their story on the KKK on a real news show, so they like became a writer on Superman, and they wrote in. Yeah, they made it an episode, and they like wrote in the actual like secret codes and like passphrase and stuff the KKK was using, and it got broadcast out as a Superman special, and the KKK couldn't continue to operate because now everyone knew their like operating rules, their secrets. So
that's awesome.
So the first thing Superman ever does is destroy the KKK, short for damage them for a little while.
The first thing Superman, I guess you could say, did or officially in the world, because as far as real success, because it's not like he's out there saving kids from buildings, but he did put a dent in the KKK for a bit, so that's good.
For a bit, yeah.
They've come back, sadly, it seems, but.
And then in the 40s, Superman is propaganda. There's the cartoons. There were the Fleischer.
I honestly don't know. Yeah,
but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, the art style. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. So there were these cartoons that were like shorts with Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the George Reeves show, and I've seen clips of that. I saw him on I Love Lucy, portraying.
It's funny that that was one of the not original, but one of the big TV shows in a time when TV was pivotal. So it was like in the 50s, and Superman was on TV with I Love Lucy and You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx and stuff. So it's like it's interesting that he's been a staple in American culture, because the Batman series is Batman 66. So it's a whole 10, 15 years before Batman is introduced to a wider audience, because there are Batman serials also. But
you know what?
I don't think they got as big as the George Reeves Superman.
You know what?
What?
Tell them Groucho sent you to buy a new DeSoto.
A new DeSoto. I love that. My dad, we used to watch that show as a kid. And when I was a kid, not my dad. I wasn't around when he was a kid. But
I'd watch that with my brother. Yeah.
I forget what channel it was on. Growing up, they all of a sudden started showing it, and it was awesome because you got to see what old style shows were like before everyone became carbon copies of each other. So
yeah, and Groucho was always entertaining because he was just so quick.
Yeah,
like anything, he would come up with like a quip, like. Well, he was Groucho Marx.
Yeah, but like you're saying, he was one of those originals that he was also live or in front of a studio audience to a degree.
He was a vaudeville guy.
Yeah. He was a vaudeville guy, but he was in front of audiences now live and now being broadcast and stuff. So
he was used to playing to the audience and getting a laugh, and in grad school I dated a girl who like I showed a Marx Brothers movie to, and she was not impressed, and she said he's just doing Bugs Bunny's bit.
So she didn't understand that Bugs
She
Bunny
didn't understand that Bugs Bunny was doing Groucho Marx's bit.
which in retrospect would be he wouldn't have gotten anywhere if he just was doing Bugs Bunny's bit, because everyone would have been doing,
So what do you think about George Reeves?
Well, hold on. Let me ask you, what's your favorite Marx Brothers movie? I'll just ask you that, and then we'll get back to Superman real quick.
Jeez. What's the one with Captain Spaulding? Hello, I must be going. I came to say I cannot stay. I must be going. I'll stay a week or two. I'll stay the summer through. But I am telling you, I must be going.
I like how when you Google Captain Spaulding now, it brings up that horse shit House of a Thousand Corpses Rob Zombie movie. So if you put in Captain Spaulding Groucho Marx, animal crackers.
Yeah.
He's an African explorer who leads a chaotic gala party.
I was always a Harpo guy, to be honest.
Yeah, Harpo, because I liked what's his name, the was it Zeppo, the one that always talked, like the Italian voice one?
Chico.
Chico. I mean, of course, Groucho was the best, and Harpo had the faces, but the way Chico would just talk and insult people was great. So.
Well, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a physical comedy guy.
Yeah, no, I've had some experience.
So I don't do the total silence thing that Harpo would do.
Yeah.
But I really like the idea of like showing a lot with your face, and your just your presence is enough to get across your emotions and all that.
Well, that's the key to a good comedian sometimes, is that too many people rely just on the words being funny or just saying something funny. There's a lot more. You can be funny without talking. You can sit in silence and be hilarious. So that's a lot of people don't get that or don't want to do that. They don't feel comfortable doing that. So to finish that question, mine is Night at the Opera. So because I believe that has the cabin scene where when they're traveling over on the boat, and they're all going into the small cabin, and it's let me bring in the water. Let me bring in the blanket and stuff. So all right, cool.
I have to change my name on here to Rufus.
Sorry, I'll edit it in post.
So you know where Rufus comes from, right?
Rufus B. Mello. He was
from Rufus T. Firefly.
From Rufus T. Firefly, yeah. From that was.
There's another Groucho character.
Yeah, I forget I'm going blank. What movie it is? But yeah, that's not Night at the Opera.
No, it's been so long. Anyway,
it's okay. So, but yeah, no, Groucho Marx. Thank you for everything you did for comedy and for all of us. So,
and Harpo,
and the whole Marx family, even
Zeppo,
even Zeppo. I was gonna say poor Zeppo, and even Shemp, you too. Even though you're not, not with us anymore.
That's another thing. So George Reeves.
The only one I saw, the only episode I tuned into for more than 30 seconds was one that the U.S. Treasury paid them to do to encourage people to buy war bonds or something. So apparently they were just contracting out writing of these episodes to whoever paid and wanted to advertise something that week, which was true of TV shows because the advertisements were not the same, and a lot of times they were built into the show. And
sometimes they would just break the fourth wall mid-episode and be like, "Oh man, I love my Lucky Strike cigarettes."
Yeah, it's a fun show for its time, but as someone who's seen other shows from the 50s and 60s, I would not. I know there was nothing else at the time to watch, but when you compare it to, I don't know what else was on at the time. Were the Honeymooners on before that or after that?
Same era.
I feel like of the shows of the time, I would have had more interest in those because something about Superman was just very stodgy and awkward. What do you think? Go ahead.
Can it be the breeze that fills the trees with that sweet and magic perfume? Oh no, it isn't the trees. It's Lucky Strike.
Filterless for more flavor. I smoked those.
Well, that's how he got so big and strong, is smoking his Lucky Strike cigarettes.
When I was a smoker, I smoked Lucky Strikes. I remember actually, we did that sketch.
Are they still exist?
They do, yeah. They do make. I don't know if they still do, but at least in 2005, you could still get the filterless also, which I'd never done before. And you did filter the cigarette, and you get all the you get tobacco in your mouth. It's the weirdest thing. But yeah, we did that sketch.
Yeah, I never smoked.
No, yeah, you're intelligent. We did that sketch in 2005, 2006. I wrote, and we filmed it.
Thank you for complimenting my intelligence.
It was horrible. It was the superhero spokespeople, and as Superman, I had Superman cigarettes It was way too
Okay.
long. I remember the speech of it, but it was that was the idea that Superman was hawking cigarettes to kids because they're good for him.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, but that was a real thing, though. I mean, advertising cigarettes and stuff. I mean, they
Yeah.
up until the '90s they swore they weren't addictive. So,
Yeah.
anyways,
So, well, I remember like the '50s idea of like what Superman looks like was like as a buff guy
hmm
is very different from like a more modern idea where people have figured out how to exercise.
he's like an old
Um,
style strongman where he's a real barrel
yeah,
chest and
barrel chested guy. He's got his Superman like shorts are like up to
yeah,
um his armpits, and he uh he talks in the old timey announcer voice.
he looks more like a
Um,
strongman or like a circus performer or something.
yeah, which is like what the outfit is kind of inspired by, right?
Yeah. And that was the
So
first time they put it on screen of any type because they'd only
mhm.
had, and it's like, well, I guess you have to put him in spandex like that because there was no other choice. You couldn't put him in cotton. He looked like he was in pajamas.
All right, so let's fast forward then to
I
Superman.
was gonna say let's fast forward to '78 because that's a big Kahuna. Let's talk
Mhm.
about Christopher Reeve and the adventures.
And this is like the start of, I think, like one of the best movie eras is Star Wars, and then Superman, and then I don't know if there was anything good in '79, but
Well, no, if
I'm sure there was.
depending on your opinions, but you had Star Wars Superman, then in '79 you had Alien, and
Yeah,
you
that's right.
had,
Yeah, yeah.
but you also had Halloween if you're into more horror stuff because Halloween before it went crazy, the first
Hmm.
Halloween's classic. Then by '80 you have Empire Strikes Back. You start getting into comedies like 48 Hours, like Beverly Hills
Yeah, so
Cop.
when is the last time you went to a movie in the theaters that was like, man, this is going to be like as high quality as like someone going to Star Wars for the first time? Like, and it was like an original thing.
I think when I saw maybe Inception, or no, I'm sorry, Interstellar.
Interstellar,
That's
yeah.
probably the last one. I mean,
That's
I hate
probably at least 10 years ago
that
now,
was
right?
2014, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of anything that's really been like. Usually, everything I'm seeing now is either derivative, so it's Marvel, or it's just I don't go to the movies that much unless it's something I have to see before it gets onto streaming.
Hmm.
These Jurassic World movies have been trash, and Marvel they've been good movies, but it's nothing that I would put up with like The Departed, or The Godfather, or
I thought
48 Hours, for instance.
the Blade Runner
2048 or 20.
2048
Yeah.
was on par with the original. It just didn't get it wasn't as popular, but
Well, and the
I
original
thought
wasn't popular either. And I
no.
think when the second one only has, by this point, the second one has to have Harrison Ford. And when you don't
Hmm.
have him as the star, people automatically are like, eh. But I think that's another one of those movies that if they assess it separately or and they give it some time, it'll probably be recognized pretty
Hmm.
well. I thought it wasn't a terrible. I liked it. The first one was
I
like
mean,
a nightmare to watch the first time because I didn't understand any of it. But
right. And the book is very different.
yeah,
If you go back to some of the like if you go back to some, like the sci-fi novels of that era, the sexism is just insane in a way like I never noticed in middle school reading them back then, and like now coming back to them, it's like the Foundation books, Isaac Asimov.
yeah.
The the first one, there's only one female character, and all she does is nag her husband. Um, and Asimov like literally wrote a book about being a dirty old man, and he would like sexually harass people at conferences and stuff. Um, so like that era of sci-fi was very like it's still the classic literature, but it's not something you would want to go back to and actually enjoy reading.
It's not like a Michael Crichton book that you could enjoy if you read it again or something.
Mm. All right, so 78,
So yeah, like you said,
9, 8.
it started '78. It started a great era for movies, but also
Mhm.
I don't know if there were any official superhero movies before this, as far as mainstream big. There was
Mhm.
Batman's movie, Batman
Uh,
'68 or '69,
mhm.
but again, that was more like a TV movie. It
Mhm.
was kind of it was chintzy. It didn't have a big movie feel because they were making big movies at the time. They had Escape from Alcatraz, or you did have Escape from Alcatraz, but you had what's the movie I'm thinking of where they're in the war camp overseas? The Great Escape. You had Stalag 17. You have a lot of movies where you can do some cool stuff with, and Batman 66 or whatever was just like a joke. So Superman 78, I don't know what people thought of it at the time when it was coming out because I don't know what people.
I think
knew
it
about
was
Superman.
the most expensive film ever made to that point.
The intro alone, like the intro credits, was $1 million, which was more than a lot of movies cost total, and it's worth it. And then I think the irony was because today part of what I watched was Superman 3. When you see the opening scene for Superman 3, the credits that are just like pasted over Jimmy Olsen, like causing death and destruction in Metropolis by accident. It's really apparent that the series fell apart at that point. But let's not jump too far ahead. Let's go. We'll just talk.
So I mean, at least in terms of effects, it's interesting because there's definitely like we could probably do the effects from Superman much cheaper today.
Yeah.
But jumping from 78 to like 88 or 80 or 94 or whatever.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have the same like ability to recreate it cheaply. You'd still have to spend a bunch of money.
Oh yeah, the prices went up, and then they would want to do it in different ways. And for as ambitious as Superman 78 is with all the different scenes of him flying and stuff, I think it does pretty well. It holds up. It's not. It's like it's similar to Jurassic Park in a way that the parts that they had to use mats and use little miniatures and stuff, it doesn't detract from the movie. It's not like when you see Godzilla in 1954 and you're like, oh, that's a man in a suit, or like it's a stop motion. Nothing in Superman looks bad. I can say it's a beautifully shot movie.
It's still kind of doing the thing with Superman that like. I think in the early comics they did a lot, which was like he would just have new powers all the time.
Yeah.
Like, and like he has X-ray, he has cold breath now, he has heat ray eyes, he has super strength, and just invent new stuff.
Yeah.
Constantly. And so in the movie, I forget which of the movies it's one like he can suddenly like pull his emblem off his chest and turn it into like a thing to throw at people.
That also, I think that's probably the third or fourth one. Yeah, but again, he throws it as like a weapon, like it's a video game.
And he can fly around the Earth backwards to turn time back.
That's the first one, and that's what people always point to as being a little too. And I can't disagree that they could have done that a little cleaner, had him actually save the day, instead of having Lex Luthor essentially win, and then Superman break the rules because he can. And his dad even being like, don't do this. And he flies through his father's face to save Margot Kidder, which
opens a lot of like issues. Like if you can time travel, like there's a lot of other stuff you could do.
I mean, it's a can of worms you don't need to open as Superman. And I think they could have. But okay, so we've talked about the absolute end of the movie. Let's go. A phenomenal cast. For the time that getting Marlon Brando was a huge deal because he was coming off Godfather. Christopher Reeve, I don't know if he was special at all at the time. But he was perfect for Superman. He really looked like that he could pull it off, and he was the time he became the blueprint for Superman on screen for a while.
And they're still using the score from that movie in the new one,
which I noticed.
So that has not been surpassed.
I thought because that's a John Williams, that's a John Williams piece, and it really is epic, especially with the credits when they're flying in. You can see why they spent money on that, and it does hook you, especially bringing you to Krypton. But getting Margot Kidder, also getting Gene Hackman, phenomenal. I don't know, his Lex Luthor is so strange. It's not a typical Lex Luthor. But
the Silver Age Lex Luthor was more of like a mad scientist than like a businessman, right?
Yeah.
So I guess it is kind of playing up the mad scientist vibe. But it's also, I think, so one thing in superhero movies, they're often they're either making a choice of I'm going to play this like completely to the source material and like take it very seriously, or I'm going to be embarrassed to be in a superhero movie.
Yeah.
And I think it was too early for them to realize they should be embarrassed to be in the
He took
movie.
it as a job. Yeah,
Hmm.
he took it seriously and played it. I mean, I'm not gonna say he played it seriously, but he did a good job for what the character was written and how it was. And then
Hmm.
having Ned Beatty next to him as his, and then Miss Tessmacher, that triangle is a great comedic duo or trio, but also a good
Hmm.
villainous, because you can see how they're also killing people and stuff or doing things. So it was pretty cool. I thought so. The cast alone really takes that movie and sets it high to begin with.
Hmm.
The plot itself, it it zooms through Superman's history, his dad dying, him
Hmm.
being in Smallville, him arriving in Metropolis, and immediately he runs into Lex Luthor, has problems. So blah blah blah. Let's just get to the ending and discuss this whole time travel thing, because Lex Luthor actually wins. He sends two nukes off in two different directions. One's going to take out the San Andreas Fault. One's going to take out where Miss Tessmacher's mom lives, I think. And
Hmm.
because she saved him from drowning in kryptonite, he's going to save her first. So he does that, but as soon as he loses, he just turns back time, and then it's like, okay, so I know he flies through his dad's face. Does he piss off his dad? Does his dad does he no longer
Well,
see him? Like, I think he takes away the ability to talk to him now. I forget the repercussions.
I don't remember. Like in a lot of the versions of it, the Jor-El in the Fortress of Solitude is like a hologram
Yeah,
now. So I guess that's kind of what it is. It's like this is a hologram and he just flew through the hologram.
yeah. Well, in the newer ones, they
Um,
say like he downloaded his consciousness into the system so he can ask. So it's like I'm living with him and stuff. So I don't.
mhm.
But you're right. Okay, so the original one. So he basically there's no repercussions for him turning back time, doing nothing. It's just kind of like cool,
Mhm.
whatever. Um, then you go to Superman 2, which a
Mhm.
lot of people like more, and I think it does have a lot going for it, especially the Donner cut.
Mhm.
Especially because you take away Superman's powers, which it's a little boring to see someone as Superman all the time. It is cool to see him lose powers and get cut and
And
stuff and not know what to do.
yeah, and I think he's a hard character to write because he's invulnerable.
Hmm.
So pretty much, and he can turn time back if he ever loses.
Yeah,
So
he really
he's
can.
literally a god.
He's literally
Um,
that's it. Yeah, that's
he so if you're invulnerable and nothing can hurt you, like where's the conflict come from? Like where's the
yeah,
threat to this character?
exactly.
Um,
And so at least if you can create some, even if only temporarily for the movie, it
right.
makes it interesting. And then on top of that, when you have the Kryptonians, Zod, and the other two people, I forget their names, they're at least
Hmm.
a formidable opponent for Superman. So there's a reason for
Right.
him to, or he has someone to fight now that's on his level, which is nice.
They're similarly solar powered
Yeah, solar powered
plants
beings, much like
from
Nuclear
Krypton.
Man, who we'll get into shortly.
Hmm.
But
So that's
um,
my theory: is Superman is a plant.
well, he can.
He has chloroplasts in his cells that
It's not
power
like
him from
it's
the sun.
plants. It's not like plants aren't active at night. That makes sense. That could be.
Yeah.
All Kryptonians are just plants.
Probably the closest DC character to him is Poison Ivy in terms of
I'm sure there's a plant man or something that
Swamp
we
Thing.
just don't know of. Swamp Thing. I always forget Swamp Thing is DC.
Yeah.
He seems so different. He seems just like a cartoon character to me that I always forget he was a comic way before anything else. But
Hmm.
um, but all right, okay. So Superman 2, they have some issues with Richard Donner. They end up forcing him out. He ends up coming back like 30 years later to recut the movie. But
Well, I think the issue was the people who owned the rights to it.
the Salkins, yeah,
Um, they were trying to like save money,
yeah,
and I think if you have a director who's now known as like the visionary author of this thing,
yeah,
then that director is the one who gets the credit, and you have to pay the director more money and
yeah.
stuff. So then they're like, well, we can do this without him,
And they
right?
force him out midway through though, which is
Hmm.
that's a strong decision because now you've created a movie that if you see the original one, the non Richard Donner cut, it really is like not even two, it's like three different movies smashed
Hmm.
together. Um, so So as a result of the the drama in the second one, apparently Gene Hackman didn't want to come back for the third, and
Hmm.
Margot Kidder said something in the papers about the Salkins, who are the producers and the owners of the
Hmm.
franchise or whatever. So they reduced her role in the third movie to like a cameo,
Hmm.
um, which
And Richard Pryor
and
to
they brought
main
Richard Pryor
character.
in. I can see them reducing Lois Lane because she was fun, like, but Lois Lane wasn't always such a like. In my knowledge, wasn't always such a spunky, like, argumentative character.
Hmm.
So like it was kind of like the shtick was played out between them, and like because he was so shucks and stuff. It's like okay, let's move on here. So it was nice that they
Well,
oh, go ahead.
one of my frustrations with Superman media in general is we keep coming back to every time you do a new version of Superman, it resets to Lois Lane doesn't know who Superman is,
Yeah,
and like clearly she's stupid because this is the same guy with glasses or not glasses.
and it's the
It's
person
like,
right
oh,
next to her at all
who
times.
is
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
Like, who is this guy who's completely
To
different than
be
the guy
fair,
who was
you do look a lot
on
different.
screen a minute ago?
You do look a lot different,
Um,
but just saying.
yeah, well, then now I have superpowers.
I wish.
Um, so anyway, like she can't recognize the guy she works next to all the time and her flying boyfriend. Anyway, so you keep like resetting to that same point, so you can never have any progress in the story.
Yeah, even if it's a
Um,
different movie and a different thing, it's always got to rely on this plot point of she can't realize it's him, and he has to do something secretly in front of her to save her life, but not be Superman. And then,
mhm,
once you've seen that a couple times, you don't need to see it again. It's over. Let
mhm.
her know. Let her be in on it,
Well,
or don't include Lois Lane. I don't know.
it's like how we keep seeing Batman's parents get killed. We've seen Batman's parents killed 15, 30, 100 times
Same
at
with
this
Spider
point.
Man at this point.
Hmm.
We don't need people to set up. That's one of the things the MCU got right. We don't need to see this guy getting spider powers.
Well,
Just he
they
has them.
keep
Cool.
having people who aren't superhero fans make superhero movies.
Yeah.
And each time they're like, well, what's this character's motivation? We better show it on screen. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, his parents were killed. That's deep. We better like make that a big dramatic moment in the movie.
Oh, and then you want to switch it up with the Punisher. Well, let's have his children killed.
Mm.
All right, let's. But no, I think at this point we've seen all that played out with Lois Lane. So it's nice in the third movie that they include Lana. I forget her last name, but his high school
Hmm.
crush, basically. But the third movie is a whole bunch of nothing. It doesn't have any type of big movie feel to it. The beginning, I mean, it looks like a TV movie. The beginning with Superman running around and solving
Hmm.
things with Jimmy Olsen, and then his whole plan is like, let's go back to Smallville, which, if this is a big movie production, the last thing you want to do is go to a small town and like fart around in Kansas for a couple days. Like, you want to see him fighting like villains and stuff. And the
My
big
memory of it was that it was trying to do like address a fear of technological advancement that
yeah
was contemporary, right? And that's still contemporary, right?
yeah
We
well it was
still have.
80 it was 83, and it was basically like, I remember the computer scene that made me laugh. It was when Richard Pryor first hacks the computers at Websco, and he
Hmm.
types in like security clearance override needed, and it's like override security clearance was the code he put in. It's like code accepted. It's like, so you just type in the same thing it just asked you, and you put it in, and it allows you. So, and they're like, well,
Well,
this,
it was 1983.
well, and but they're like, well, we lost $83,000. Where are we going to find it? The check had his name on it.
Hmm.
They handed the check to him with his name on it. It would take them 13 seconds to look through the records and say who they paid instead of $100 this week, 87,000. So they find him. They want him to control the weather satellite. Immediately, we are, even though the last movie had Kryptonians captured
Hmm.
in mirrors, we are immediately way off,
So
way
was
off
that
course.
not the Phantom Zone?
They were in the Phantom Zone, yes.
Okay.
So you have the Phantom Zone in the other movies, and then this movie introduces a weather machine that can just control the weather around them. That's
Hmm.
that's more unbelievable than a Superman, than a Phantom Zone, anything. The weather satellite.
Right. Well,
So
I think it's the difference between once you get into like, oh, these are aliens and they have alien technology, whatever. there's a suspension of disbelief built into that,
Yeah,
and then we get back to like Earth and Earth technology, and
yeah.
it's like we're nowhere near having weather control satellites.
Well, it would have at least made sense because they do make a plot point out of his stupid vessel he landed in Superman
Hmm.
3, and he finds like a green orb or whatever to heal him. It would have made more sense if, like, oh, Websco found this thing in retro technology, how to make a weather satellite. I don't know. So, not that I'm trying to rewrite Superman 3 40 years after the fact, but the movie sucked.
Hmm.
And it really turned me off from watching any of Superman 4. I watched a couple clips on YouTube of Superman 4. I read the synopsis on Wikipedia,
Hmm.
and I said, "This is not for me." It's just John Cryer was in it. I watched
Okay.
I watched every line of his on YouTube. He talks like a Valley girl. He still looks like Ducky for some reason. What's in Gene Hackman's back because the Salkins are gone. They had to sell the movie by
Hmm.
this point, so he actually came back. But
So this was like a kind of a fly by night production company
it was, yeah,
that
it was
made a lot of like rip-offs and like low budget stuff.
from what Christopher, it was Canon Films. From what Christopher Reeve said, they were making, I believe it was 30 other films at the time,
Hmm.
which to me, which is bonkers to hear because usually a production company's making like two or three things at a time tops. So
While you were talking, I just made another film.
30 is insane, and one of them is Superman, which 10 years before was like the technological standard. And this
Hmm.
movie looks like it was hacked to pieces in a high school editing bay. Like, just I saw a couple clips. I saw the clip where like Lenny Luthor breaks out Lex, like he traps
Hmm.
the cops in the car. Everything about it. This wasn't even a TV show anymore. This was more like a stage play of Superman now. And then when you involve
Yeah, and they got Christopher Reeve back by promising him to like give him creative input, right?
and he after the fact he was like, I should have just stayed away from this disaster.
Hmm.
And it did. It put a dent in his career. And it's not like Christopher Reeve was ever going to be a star. He was probably one of those typecast guys that once you became Superman, you're Superman.
Hmm.
But it definitely didn't help when
But
three
I
and
think
four completely wear off all the good will you
if
have from two and one and two.
if that's the direction your career goes, why not be happy with like
Lean into it.
I played Superman for a while.
Yeah.
Um, like that's not a bad. I mean, I'm not an actor, so I don't know the
I
actor
think he eventually
career
came
path.
around to
But
it, but it was just I think there was such a frustrating production and stuff. I think that more kind of
hmm.
bothered him. But so Superman 4 killed the franchise effectively for almost 20 years, which
Hmm.
hadn't happened before to anything really. Even Batman hadn't only got canceled 8 years.
Right, and Superman Returns
Superman Returns was the big
kind
return.
of
It was meant
kind of
it was meant to continue Superman 2.
right. So it was a weird like semi retcon reboot where it's in the present day of 2005 or whatever,
Yeah.
and so they have 2005 technology, but it's set after Superman 2, but Superman 3 and 4 don't count,
And the
and
idea
it's a
was
new
that it was
actors.
I think it was like 6 months to a year after Superman. It was supposed to be 6 months to a year. Like after Superman 2,
Hmm.
he just fucks off, flies back to Krypton to see what's going on, because some satellite said, "Oh, Krypton actually survived." So he go takes him 6 months to get there or whatever and back.
Hmm.
Finds out nothing's going on. In that time, he impregnated Lois Lane apparently, right before he left, but she
Hmm.
doesn't know she was impregnated by Superman, which is really disturbing. Um, but yeah, anyway, so that movie, it
So
had,
that brings up like questions you probably shouldn't get into.
no, it was.
The Spider-Man comic I'm thinking of, probably.
I don't want to know. I'm afraid now.
Okay.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. We could talk after the show, and you could fill me in, then we could bring it up on another episode. But no, I remember that movie had some good set pieces. It had a cool scene where Superman is stopping some robbers, and they're firing a machine gun at
Hmm.
him, and then it ends up they shoot at his eyeballs, and it's like literally just tinking off of him. When he saves the airplane from
Hmm.
crashing, phenomenal scene, really good, really believable CGI, good for 2006.
Hmm.
What's his name? The pervert being Lex Luthor. Kevin Spacey.
Brandon Ruth.
No, Kevin
Oh
Spacey
no.
being Lex Luthor. He's not. He's not terrible. I actually don't. I didn't hate him as Lex Luthor. He was
Okay.
more of like the slick businessman, trying.
Right.
But again, it was a land scheme. Again, it was a real estate, and it's like,
It
is there
was
really nothing else we
also
can do here with Lex Luthor?
I don't think it was I don't remember it being a bad movie.
Yeah,
It just was not very creative in the way the other ones were,
yeah,
in that it was just like part of the charm of those movies was there's just so much weird stuff going on.
yeah.
And then this was a little bit more grounded.
It was grounded, but it was
Um
also drab. It was
mhm,
there was a lot of like newsreels and stuff, and like
mhm.
seriousness to it, and you know,
Which is not what that series was.
no, Superman has always been
You
kind of
you
fun. Yeah,
you could do Superman that way, but that's not what that series was. So, and I just don't think it did financially well enough to reboot the series in
yeah.
the way they had hoped.
Well, you
Um,
had Batman Begins the year before, so that probably set
mhm,
unrealistic expectations of what this was going to do. And they kept
mhm,
trying to tie. And I remember they did a big push around that time of like, oh, the Donner cut of Superman 2, and now you can watch the real sequel to it.
mhm,
There was too much of that where people just, like you said, they saw it and they maybe might have enjoyed it, might have not, but there's like, I don't either don't need to see this again or I don't care where this goes.
mhm,
That's just, and it probably cost a ton, probably because you have a man flying and creating Krypton planets and stuff.
mhm.
So they moved on to other. I don't even know. I assume it was Warner Brothers. They moved on to other things right after.
Yeah.
So
And so the actor from that, Brendan Ruth,
yeah,
was on the DC like WB shows for a long time,
he was
playing
playing like a different
Ray
version of
Palmer.
Superman. Oh, Ray. Oh, I'm sorry, Ray Palmer. Interesting. The
He
Atom.
was playing Ray Palmer, and then he later on they also brought him on to play like a Kingdom Come version of Superman.
I know. I've seen clips or at least images online where they had multiple Supermen and multiple this and
Hmm.
that and stuff. So I didn't think he was a bad Superman, but again, he mostly got cast because he looked like Christopher Reeve, which
Hmm.
they admitted at the time. They're like, we want someone who gives that same vibe to Christopher Reeve. It's like, well, that's cool. I don't think anything wrong with the guy, but maybe just cast someone that could be Superman
Hmm.
and then worry about it after. Um,
I don't think he was bad. He could have been his own
he could have
Superman.
been.
He was
And he just didn't have
for one
he just
movie.
didn't have a chance to do anything more. So
Hmm.
so again, Superman's now put to rest for I believe 6 or 7 years until Man of Steel comes out.
Hmm.
Um, so what do you think of? First of all, what do you think of Henry Cavill as Superman?
I remember not. I remember not having a problem with Henry Cavill as Superman. Um, and I think he's a nerd, and I like nerds. So
Yeah,
there's that. No problem with his acting. I think there were some creative decisions with that movie that I remember being like a little bit not enthused about.
well,
Um,
things outside of his control. Yeah,
yeah.
I gotta say,
Um,
of all the screen Supermen, he definitely was the most super looking
hmm.
because he had the physique.
Hmm.
He had the like the chiseled everything. Like he
Hmm.
looks like Superman, and he can definitely pull it off with his acting. So I do think it was an interesting, and the fans loved him, even though he was
Hmm.
in some bad movies. I do think it was an interesting choice that James Gunn went in a different direction. Not because I mean I understand because he wanted to separate from the Snyder universe, but Henry Cavill, as far as casting, Henry Cavill was like a perfect cast for Superman. I just think he
Hmm.
got stuck with some shitty movies. And I don't hate Man of Steel. It's just like you said, there's a lot of stuff in that movie that's like, eh. And first of all, before anything else, all the Snyder movies have terrible color palettes. They're not fun to watch.
Hmm.
They're not like visually interesting to watch. Where Superman 78, there's a lot of different things on the screen. It's a beautifully shot. Superman or Man of Steel,
Yeah. So
it's like
it's
gray. Go ahead.
if you're going to like comics that were in color and they had very vibrant um, color palettes because you only had so many colors to work with that you could print in, right?
Yeah.
So how many tones was it you got per page? Like four?
It was four, but I mean, they usually I know it was the idea was to have like three stand out and then
Hmm.
one kind of fill in. So
Yeah. But they would really use that to effect, right?
Mhm.
So everything would be really colorful and bright, and that's Superman's world too. Is like Metropolis is always like an optimistic place, and
yeah,
the bridge has been destroyed 5 times. We just rebuild it, and
It's the
like
opposite of
this
Gotham.
building
Yeah,
has collapsed 15 times. We just put it back.
no
It's
big
fine.
deal. Superman's here.
No big deal. So, oh, there's another monster. Like, I love living in Metropolis.
How cute.
Yeah. Um. No, it's Parasite again. Um.
It's Parasite.
So
Couldn't we get a good villain this time?
so but yeah, I agree. The color palette was a Snyder color palette and not a Superman color palette. Um. And I kind of think that Snyder was just mismatched to the DC world.
Yeah.
Um.
Well, Snyder's his big original hit, as far as I know, was 300,
Mhm.
which was a comic, and he did the color palette basically from the comic, and then he said, "This is what I'm going to do for every of the rest of my movies. Just make them dark,
Mhm.
like like the light colors will be dark, and the dark colors will be the darkest thing you've ever seen." Um, so in Man of Steel, so we have Henry Cavill, and we have Kevin Costner as his dad. Probably one of the silliest scenes I've ever seen was forcing his dad to die.
Mhm.
A crux of Superman is that, he has to learn he can't save everyone, and his dad dies because of a heart
Right.
attack. Typically in the comics, and in most of the media, usually when he's there working with him on the farm or something, and Superman can't save him, and it's a lesson.
Mhm.
In Man of Steel, there's a tornado coming in, and
And Superman shoves him into it for some
someone's
reason.
stuck in a
He's
truck,
like, "Get in there, get in
and
the tornado," and yeah,
yeah,
no, I'm not going to pull you out. Get in there, stay in the
and the
tornado.
dad is like, he's like, "No, son, you healthy 21-year-old, fully in shape, monstrous like male, don't go in the tornado to save the dog or whatever, the little kid. Me,
Hmm.
80-year-old Kevin Costner, I'm gonna go in because we don't want people knowing you're Superman. Whether he's Superman or not, the son would almost always go into that situation, or he
Hmm.
would go with the dad. Then when the dad gets stuck there and he's like, "Well, I'm about to die," he holds his hand up like, "No, Superman, don't come and save me. No, don't let them know who you are. There's like 6 people there, and you're faster than a speeding bullet. You can get in and get out. You can get him a mile
Hmm.
away. Say, oh wow, magic." So, him being forced to learn that lesson in such a convoluted way that he can't save everyone from a situation he actually probably could save him. That's immediately we're losing part of what makes
Right.
Superman. And then by the
And
end of the movie, we've really lost what makes him Superman because he doesn't figure out a way to stop Zod from
hmm
killing someone. He doesn't outsmart Zod or do something. He literally just snaps his neck, which I don't think
hmm
Superman would ever do. I don't,
um,
I don't know. I don't think that he
I
would ever do
mean,
that.
Superman has never been quite as no killing as Batman.
Hmm.
Which is weird because Batman is usually the darker character.
Yeah.
Like if it's a monster who's like on par with him, he's usually
Well, I've seen
willing to
Superman
like
like
kill it.
laser people's, through their heads and stuff, but
Um,
snapping a neck, it was just, it
yeah,
was so hardcore. Like,
it was not a very Superman action. It was something you wouldn't expect him to do.
but also the
And
shot, if I recall, he was like standing and Zod was kneeling. It was very like
mhm,
it wasn't like an equal. It wasn't like he snapped him in an equal position. It was a very
right.
dominant like, and I don't know. That's just not Superman. That's never been Superman. So that's
Yeah.
that's a creative choice that sets him up, different.
So then there was Brightburn.
Which was a real Superman movie because the parents,
Kind of, yeah.
yeah, the
I
parents,
think
the parents tried to do a good job, and the kid just was affected by different factors than Clark Kent, and didn't
uh,
have as good of a heart as Clark Kent.
well, I think it was designed. It's clearly a Superman movie. It doesn't say Superman.
Yeah.
Doesn't use the same names, but it's the same setup, same powers,
Oh
basically.
yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, what if Superman were evil? So that's another Superman trope, I guess, is evil Superman that we see a lot of in a lot of different media, right?
Well, in Superman
So
3, they
there's
had the split identity Superman
there's
fighting
split
him.
Clark Kent, Superman,
He was like
and then
fixing Tower of Pisa and stuff. Like,
so there's Injustice has an evil Superman.
mhm.
There's I think there's Omni Man. There's Brightburn. There's uh Homelander from The Boys.
Oh yeah,
Um, so this is a trope that has come up in a lot of Superman media is evil Superman.
yeah.
So I don't think Brightburn falls outside of
Oh, not at all. No,
the range of
that
Superman
was a good movie
material.
too.
Yeah.
I like it. I
Um,
like it where the good doesn't necessarily win because that's unrealistic.
yeah.
You know.
And then that planet is just basically like screwed over
Oh yeah,
at that point.
they're destroyed. He's just gonna
Hmm.
mess them up and then go somewhere else probably. But
Yeah. So that's like his species is reproduces that way.
yeah,
They're like cuckoos. They like get raised by people on that planet, and then they activate and then
it's
turn
like
into.
it's like the xenomorph. Like how they always want to weaponize that. They just leave one of these
Mhm.
little babies on a planet and it destroys it eventually. That's pretty. That's a pretty interesting concept.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
so
think at the end they were going to do it like an evil Justice League. So they had Rainn Wilson had done a superhero movie where
oh
he plays
yeah,
the Red Mist or whatever.
yeah.
No, that's kick ass.
He did some trashy movie that I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah.
He did a lot of bad
And
movies.
so they have a
Yeah.
picture of him as that character at the end. And so these are the same universe of this like very low budget Rainn Wilson movie and Brightburn.
See, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind Brightburn lighting or just killing Rainn Wilson. That would be interesting. The character Rainn Wilson's play, not his real life.
Hmm.
YouTube turns of service. Um, okay, so let's get into Batman vs Superman and then Justice League because
Oh yeah.
these movies fucking. I'm not a fan. I mean,
No.
Batman vs Superman. I might have actually flipped through a couple times after I saw it, just like to see maybe a scene or two again. Justice League was offensive, and I. And then when I saw the Snyder cut, they're like, "Oh, it fixes it. It's like a 7-hour movie." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. You had your shot. I'm not. I'm
Yeah.
not going back."
And so I did watch the Snyder cut and it there were certain things in there that were like, okay, now this other thing makes sense.
Yeah,
Whereas it did not make sense before.
sure.
But it does not make it a better movie because a movie should not need to be 5 hours long to make sense.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
no, you need to have a narrative structure. You need to be able to tell that because that's what movies are. If
well, the trouble is the whole thing is slow motion. So if you like made it normal speed, it would be like a 5 minute movie. It would all
well,
be
and
like,
even the spots that were in slow motion, they were dragged out, and everything took
mhm.
forever with talking and being sad, and not only that, the casting was all over the map. I don't hate Ben Affleck as Batman.
No, I'm okay with
I'm
that.
okay with him. I thought his
Um,
suit was great. I thought his mentality, the way he acted and stuff, was pretty good.
yeah, it's just he did not get a lot good to do
He didn't get a lot to do. I thought
with
his
it.
Bruce Wayne was good, and they explained his motivations for why he hated Superman.
Hmm.
Very well at the beginning of Batman vs Superman. So I kind of understood that, but I also feel like Batman, being the world's greatest detective, would have figured out Superman's identity
Hmm.
and would have also known the Martha thing
Hmm.
long before they got to that
Well,
point.
also that's the thing everyone makes fun of from that movie is Martha,
Yeah,
and deservedly.
yeah, 100% deservedly because he's ready to kill this man and he says save Martha and it's like he's a Manchurian candidate. He just deactivates.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, and I didn't even. And as a fan of these characters for decades before that, I did not realize that they both had the same. The mothers had the same name. I had no idea.
Hmm.
It never dawned on me. So
Well, it takes a Zack Snyder to figure that
yeah,
out.
it takes a real Zack Snyder to figure that trash out. So
Um,
so at the end of Batman vs Superman, okay, they fight, they don't fight, they become friends. Why did they have to introduce Doomsday? And such
Yeah.
a crappy version of Doomsday. Well, and then also I'm sorry, before we get a horrible version of Lex Luthor. I don't know what they were going for hiring Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. I mean, I get
right.
that they were making like a tech bro, social media mogul type
Well, what
millionaire,
I'm
but
betting is they just like, again, probably not a fan of the comics, and probably just went to him and were like, he was like, okay, who are his enemies? Who are his enemies? Like, okay, he's got this. Oh, this guy's scary. What's he do? And he's like, well, he killed Superman. He killed Superman? Well, he's a real threat. We got to put him in there.
yeah,
I was like, oh, who's this guy? Who's this guy? He's bald. Who's this bald guy? Well, he has to be in there. He's Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor. Okay, let's put him in there. Let's put him in there. Well, who's the guy in the bat suit? The guy in the bat suit. Like how that's another. You're in charge of this.
But I mean, typically, I mean, even for Lex Luthor though, you figure you'd have someone either imposing in, if not stature, imposing in the way they present themselves, or or they're a mastermind. This Lex
Yeah,
Luthor, he
I
just seemed
mean,
like a petulant kid, and I never thought Superman would get foiled by him. So
to me, the thing about Lex Luthor is the intelligence, right?
yeah,
So he's supposed to be someone who's like one of the smartest people on Earth.
it's what puts him on par
Um,
with Superman. It's what makes him even able
yeah,
to
but
enter the realm of
his
Superman.
downfall is his obsession with Superman.
Hmm.
Like if he just focused on other stuff, he could do great things, right?
Yeah.
Um, so how about this for a weird shower thought type Superman uh, premise
Oh yeah.
is um, so are you familiar with the works of Friedrich Nietzsche?
Roughly, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Right. So he had the idea of the Ubermensch, the Overman, the Superman, and the idea is basically like, and people have misused this to like say, well, talk about their own superiority, like I'm a superior human, I have the right to make my own morality,
Sure.
and that always ends badly,
Of course, yeah. No.
always, every single time. Um, but so Lex, Lex Luthor kind of follows this idea of like Nietzsche had this idea that like you can create your own meaning and your own morality through will to power. So the process of self improvement and continually working on yourself and becoming strong, intellectually, physically, um, various kinds of strongness would allow you. That's what gives you the right to create your own morality, which
Gotcha.
is very much a Lex Luthor thing,
Yeah.
more so than a Superman thing.
100%, yeah.
So just in terms of like who you would call the Ubermensch or the Superman in that world, well, it's kind of Lex
It's Lex
Luthor,
Luthor,
right?
yeah.
He's the one who has made himself into someone who creates their own morality and operates at a different moral level than everyone else, or
No,
at
but
least that's how
he
he
thinks
sees
he
himself.
thinks he's on a higher plane than other people, so he's doing,
Mm-hmm.
if not God's work, he's doing the work that needs to be done. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to
And
see.
so
Okay, go ahead.
if you were Lex Luthor, that's that. So this is the one thing that's kind of compelling about it, using him in the movies, and
Hmm.
not usually how he is used. Um, because he's usually like comedic, like this guy just hates Superman for no reason.
Yeah.
Um, but
Or he's jealous of him, or
or he's
whatever.
jealous of
Something
him. But
silly, yeah,
it's
something stupid.
if this Brightburn creature really existed, and it was something that could wipe out all of humanity if it chose,
Lex
right?
Luthor would be the only person that could stand in its way.
Well, I can kind of understand his perspective. Like, no one should have that power,
Yeah.
right? Humanity created atomic bombs, and that power is too much for us to have. We
Well,
shouldn't have those. And now we have a individual, unelected, doesn't represent anyone, who has taken it upon himself and holds this power. And it's not even our species; it's someone from another planet
yeah.
who has all this power. And then you have like the kind of the creepy scenes where Superman is like he's like floating in like a horror movie thing, and he has like the red glowing eyes, and um, I can see it.
Well, it's interesting. You made me think of two things there with that Lex Luthor. Excuse me. It's kind of like when they have the donkeys that can take you to the bottom of the Grand Canyon or up a
Mm-hmm.
mountain or something. Those donkeys are known for carrying. They're trained and all that stuff. If one day you're on that thing and that donkey decides, or it gets scared, it gets spooked, something, it can fall. There's
Mm-hmm.
no guarantee that that donkey's going to perform the same way every time because it's a living thing. That's the same, same with Superman. As much as we think he's always going to do the good thing, how do we know eventually he's going to decide, well,
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessarily what's good for Superman or what I think is good for this part of the world or that part of the world. So you can see why Lex would be, you don't, like you said, you don't
And
want someone having that much power where they can decide on their own, you know.
right, and Lex Luthor is selfish, so
What in the
he probably thinks like other people are selfish too, right?
I lost my camera somehow. 1 second, coming back. Yeah, exactly. Lex Luthor, he's um, good. Yeah, he's thinking like it, but and most people are selfish, or most people understand that if you had that power, you would probably abuse it. So it's interesting to think
Right.
of.
So,
It'll perform the same way every we can try.
do you think Superman has never abused X-ray vision?
I think he's I think he's had to when he was probably learning about it. During my research for this, I saw a scene in Smallville where like he's accidentally looking in the girls' locker room,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, I don't. Did he mean to do that, or is that just him dialing in his powers, or what? I don't know. I don't know. And where does it
Mm-hmm.
stop? Because X-ray vision, he should just see bones and metal. It's not like he can see private parts and stuff. I think, but I don't
Well,
know
it's
exactly how
so
it
it
works.
doesn't work in the comics like actual X-rays, right?
Yeah,
I just read a Silver Age one where the X-ray vision like actually bombards things with X-rays.
yeah. And like, so he's just walking around giving people cancer, like.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What
So it's giving it's his cancer
Way
rays.
to God!
Um,
Way to go, Zoops!
um, which does not bode well for Lois Lane. Um,
But all right, fair
I think
enough.
yeah. So that is a question of about him is like, well, no one can be all moral all the time, right?
Yeah,
There's things I've done in my life I regret having done, and
sure.
I learned from that. But if you have that much power and you're going to regret doing something,
Probably going to
well,
be on a grand
that's a
scale
very
too.
expensive lesson, right?
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, maybe that is why Snyder had him kill someone, because it was a lesson he had to learn. I don't know. That's an interesting way to
I
look
think
at
it
it.
was just he didn't understand the character
He
very
didn't.
well.
That's probably
That's
more likely.
the Occam's razor explanation.
Well, actually, the thing with Superman actually makes me think of Doctor Manhattan in The
Hmm.
Watchmen, and especially the way they changed the Watchmen book to the movie. Where in the book, the way that they bring the world together, Ozymandias brings the world together, is aliens
Hmm.
or fake aliens. Whereas in the movie,
It's a giant squid.
It's Doctor Manhattan.
Hmm.
And to me, if Doctor Manhattan, who had been a U.S. operative for the entirety of his existence, all of a sudden went rogue and blew things up that weren't. I mean, even if he blew up a couple of U.S. things, he blew up mostly things around the world. I don't think the
Right.
world would be like, "Hey, U.S., join us in the fight against this guy." They'd be like, "Hey, U.S.,
Hmm.
we're gonna shove every nuke we have up your ass because of Doctor Manhattan, because we never trusted you with this guy, and now." So it's the same thing. It's is Doctor Manhattan always going to do the right thing? And he's basically a Superman of that universe.
Right.
So yeah,
And his actual like story I recall was like he just loses interest in humanity.
yeah, he just
Like he's just
realizes that
like
they're
I'm not a part of this anymore.
yeah, he just doesn't care about the people or the inner workings or anything.
Hmm.
So he's at the whole. We could spend a lot of time on Doctor Manhattan. All right, but I had a couple other things to bring up, not Superman. So let's see. Do you have anything else on Superman to talk about?
I'm sure there's tons you could talk about Superman, but we can move on.
All right, no, I just wanted just some quick, um, interesting notes. Okay, did you see that Mark Hamill picture that came out? It wasn't of him, but it was of at conventions what he charges people for his
No,
signature. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I'm sorry.
sorry, I had to close something.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, his autograph. He's charging $300 to $400
Hmm.
now, and I can't find the picture right now. But I'm just wondering. So let's say I believe it was, and his logic is, well, I don't want people to come and get my autograph and then sell it on eBay.
Hmm.
Is Mark Hamill's autograph really that valuable? I mean, I was going to look on eBay just out of curiosity to see, but
I have no idea.
my problem with this is, or my comment, I guess, he's a millionaire, or should be, from his
Hmm.
movies, from the Star Wars stuff. Why is he concerned with if people are going to go out of their way, get some toys of his, have him sign them, and then sell them? Why is that affecting his business? I don't think he has a business selling toys or selling his autographs outside of at these conventions. So it's not like people aren't going to go to him because they still, if you're a fan, you still want to meet him. And what you're doing by pricing these things so exorbitantly, you're either pricing out real fans or you're making real fans decide, well, do I want to pay electricity this month? Or do I want to get an autograph of some guy who played Luke Skywalker 50 years ago? I don't. To me, it seems kind of it's just shitty.
Well, I mean, part of that is like just the market, right? Of if he can get $300,
Yeah, it's
and
sad
like,
that he can. I don't.
and then he will, right?
Yeah,
Um, and then I just read a Stephen King book, where one of the bad guys or not the villain, but like a passive villain in the book are eBayers who follow around the main character or one of the characters, like trying to get autographs, and they're super obnoxious.
sure.
Like they figure out what hotel she's in and
Yeah,
like stand outside her door and be like, "Oh, this is for my grandmother. She's in a wheelchair. She couldn't come. Can you sign this for her?"
sure.
And so I think probably, and so I don't want to get into here like what my brushes with the public eye have been.
Sure.
But you would agree I've had a couple of
You've had
brushes
issues,
where
yeah.
I
No,
was in the news.
absolutely, yeah.
Um,
For good things, people. For good things. He's never been arrested.
that you know of.
I'm
Uh,
sure I've checked your records.
okay. Uh, no, I've never been arrested, and even if I was, I wasn't convicted. Um,
It's important. That's an
but
important.
I've had
important distinction.
my
Very convicted.
brushes with the news, media, and being in the public eye and all that, and it's never good. Like people think they want to be famous. They do not want to. You don't want to be famous. And I haven't been famous, but I've had like interest in things I was doing where people went nuts.
It's a
And
degree of fame. It's not famous, but it's a degree of
uh,
more fame than the general person, where people do
sure.
recognize you from various things.
All what I'm trying to convey is no, I don't think I'm famous, but I also have a little bit of like experience to talk about this. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
that's on. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So moving from that, like in that position, everyone wants something from you,
Hmm.
or thinks you owe them something.
Sure.
Um, like, and that if you're a famous person, that could be you. If you're an attractive famous person, they want sex, or they want your attention, or they want you to sign something, or
Yeah.
they want you to promote their thing, or like use their fame to boost their whatever. So it gets very hard for people in that position to like have friends even or make new friends, because it's like when is the shoe gonna drop of this someone wants something from me,
Hmm.
or like, okay, what's the ask? Are they gonna ask for a selfie? This person's looking at me in the restaurant. He is gonna ask for a selfie.
Yeah.
Oh, yep, here he's coming. He's gonna ask for a selfie. And like, if the ask is a selfie, it's not a big deal. But I'm sure for Mark Hamill, he's been doing this for 50 years, right?
Hmm.
Or however, what's 79 to
48 years
25?
at this point. Yeah, 48.
Yeah. So like every moment of your public life where you're extremely recognizable and like everyone knows who you are and you can't go out without people asking you to sign stuff. I can see him like pricing it that way just to not have to do it that much anymore.
Well,
Like I think it's exhausting.
But I think you're misunderstanding. He's not walking around with this sign around his neck.
Well,
This
it's
is
right.
at
No, it's
this is
at
at a convention.
it's at
So yeah.
conventions and stuff, right?
So that's my
But I
issue,
can see
because
him like
these people have already spent their money to get in, and now they're spending money to get online, or not. They're spending time online. If you don't
Mhm.
want to deal with the public, then just don't go to the convention at that point.
Well, let me look up what the
So,
price on eBay of one of these autographs is.
well, I see them here.
Um,
They're all over the place, from $100 to $800, depending if they're what their photos are. But nothing's being bid on, so it's hard to see.
Well,
You know.
can you see the
Here.
sold?
Here's a Skywalker signed PSA, so it's certified. $50 with 13 bids of him as a Luke Skywalker. So things that are selling are around $100.
Well, let me go to filter. And I go down
Some of them are
to
trading cards or toys, which definitely
sold
worth it.
items. 220. Okay. So here's a signed Mark Hamill picture for $40. A signed Funko for 700. Signed toy sold for 2,500.
So here's the prices directly from this year,
Mhm.
from Fan Expo. An 8x10 to sign, $400. A premium, I don't know what that means. I assume that's a bigger photo or whatever, $500. And if it's a bulky item, so a toy or whatever,
Mhm.
$700. It just, to me, it sounds, because you're already paying money just to get in line, if I
Right.
recall. And it's
I
just
mean,
like,
it's
I know that it's his only, bread and butter at this point, because no one's, I mean, maybe five
it.
people are going to sign up for
I
his
I'm not
Joker
gonna
signature, but
I'm not gonna like say it's not a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But I also don't see it as like he's doing it to insult fans or
no,
like
I just think he's out of touch with
yeah,
reality.
possibly. Yeah.
But that's okay. I didn't want to shit on Mark Hamill. I just wanted to get your opinion on it, because it was
Yeah, I
strange to me.
mean, I think it's it's a lot of money, but also like that's how
That's how
people
these
who've
things
been in
are.
those franchises like that's what they do now, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's like Star Trek, all the Star Trek actors. If you've been on Star Trek once, you're set for life because you can go to conventions for the rest of your life and sign photos for even if you sold photos for $10 a piece, you could have a line of people like and make thousands of dollars from a convention, right?
Yeah. Well, that's now anything. The Sopranos actors, even the tiniest actor from that can go to just do the convention circuit and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
credit to them. Okay, cool. Not Mark Hamill, but let's get last comment of the night. 40 years ago today, July 3rd. Do you know what came out?
40 years ago would have been 85.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Back to the Future.
You're right. 40th anniversary tonight. Back to the Future Part 1. I know a movie we've definitely watched and talked about
Mm-hmm.
together, so we'll have to do an episode about the series, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to say a quick happy birthday to Back to the Future. Phenomenal
Happy
movie.
birthday, Back to the Future.
Really great movie. I mean, like you were saying, that era of movies that started. I mean, Back to the Future
Mm-hmm.
was 85. I was right in the middle of it.
And we're now 10 years past the future that they visit in
Well,
Back to the Future too.
I was laughing that if we did the Back to 55 that they did in 85, it would be 1995. Which
Mm-hmm.
I know people say that, like, every day people are saying, "Oh my God, we're close." Like, now we're closer to 2050 than we are to
Mm-hmm.
2000. I saw that happen as
Well,
of yesterday.
we're now like the age of his
Biff,
parents in
probably.
85.
Yeah. Well, we're probably a little younger still, because they were in their late 40s at that
They were
point. So
17.
plus 30, so 47, 48 years old.
All right, fair
So
enough.
so we're still a
So
little
we're
younger, but not by
a
much.
little bit.
We're
We're
getting
getting
there.
close to it.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
more like the uncle, or no, the older brother and the older sister of Marty. I guess we could still hold on to that one. When did
Well,
this
no, we're
happen? That is-
um, but still, yeah, those movies. The first one still holds up. Weirdly, because it is like a weird premise that his mom is into him, and
yeah,
like that's never not been a weird premise.
it
Like I think a lot of people told them this is weird and we
yeah.
don't want to make it.
Well,
So
it never ventures too far into creepy. So even now, you can still kind of laugh
yeah,
about it. It's like hijinks more than anything else. And I think,
yeah. There's a scene where Biff gets
oh no,
rapey.
I meant with Marty. Yeah,
Yeah,
Biff trying to rape Lorraine is horrible. And
yeah.
the fact that they're still friends with him years later, he's sitting there like their neighbor. Now,
And it's like,
Biff, I
remember that
told you
time you,
another coat of wax on that because you
yeah,
tried to rape Lorraine that time. Oh, sorry, Mr. M. Like, Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
that's not great.
Not great.
Um,
But hey,
but
it was the
it's
50s. What are you gonna do?
it was the 80s.
It was the 80s and the 50s.
Like they knew
So
they should have known better by then.
they were depicting the 50s though, so I give them a
Mm.
little credit. But all right, cool.
Um,
Well, thank you. I have nothing else to add on any of that silliness, so we will call it
where's
a
my
night.
flying car?
I really was hoping for those, although they're exceedingly dangerous. The idea of them, they would have to be automated.
Yeah, the idea of people flying everywhere.
Yeah, like we
Can
can't.
you
People,
imagine,
people can't
like,
control 2 dimensions, let alone, or the one plane.
yeah.
Let alone you add the y-axis. That's I don't think
Can you
that's gonna.
imagine if everyone had a pilot's license and was flying everywhere, and like they're pulling into traffic in like
Space,
in three
like
dimensions? Yeah,
sky
and
traffic, because they would just end up in the
sky
sky.
lanes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
either that or we would just block out the sun, where people just
Hmm.
had no lanes, and at that point it's chaos and crashes. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's something that'll ever happen. At least with people controlling the cars. So
Possibly not.
all right, cool.
And
Go ahead. What were you saying?
also not. We just don't have the technology to have things move like that
Not yet.
yet.
At least
We have drones and stuff but it's different.
well, we don't have it safely for people inside. Drones can shake and
Mhm.
move and maneuver a lot different when they don't have meat inside them that needs to stay a certain way.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest issue with drones, you could build something that moved like those flying cars. It would just not have that shape, right? It would have four big propellers, and the energy requirements would be very high.
It
So
would be
you would need a
unwieldy,
way
and then
to store.
you'd have to change infrastructure for places they could park
Uh,
and stuff like that.
you would need five. You would get about 5 minutes worth of flight time.
Yeah.
Per. Yeah.
We need to harness nuclear power before we do things like that.
We need Mr. Fusion.
Miniature nuclear.
That's
power.
what makes
We
it
do need
work.
Mr. Fusion.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool.
I need a coffee maker.
I always thought it was great. You could just fuel your car with garbage. Like that. That was amazing. I know that was just fueling the flux capacitor, but I wish that was everything. Just fueling it with garbage. Imagine.
Oh yeah, they never show them like how the hover technology is powered.
Yeah.
Um,
Probably a mini
so
nuclear
that-
reactor. Yeah. What else would come out with that kind of power in this world? So
well, they just don't show it. Like,
they're smart. They don't get into it.
and like whatever the technology is like built into the like hubcaps of the car because like when it goes back to 1885, it's not like it has lost the flight capability.
Yeah.
But the only like line they use to explain it is, the
hubcaps.
flight circuits are fried.
As if, but if they weren't, he could just travel around.
Right, he wouldn't need gas
Yeah.
because you're not
just
turning the
You
wheels.
just need trash.
Uh,
All right.
All
Well,
right.
he's asking to go. So you have a great rest of your night. Everyone have a happy 4th of July. Enjoy Superman. We will be back to talk about it a little more next week. Or at least
don't blow your hands off.
The review. Please don't blow your hands off, people. And have a good night, everyone.